Hey, I'm Lindsay Parker, and I'm talking to singer-songwriter Kenny Loggins about his new autobiography, Still All Right, on Under the Covers. There is a chapter in the book called At the Movies, and you were the soundtrack GOAT, basically, in the 80s. Top Gun is on everyone's mind at the moment.
I love what's happening, of course, with Danger Zone and Top Gun. All of a sudden, it's streaming 1 million streams a day, which is amazing.
That's a huge, huge song, but I'm even a bigger fan of another song you did for the Top Gun soundtrack, which I think is a total bop. It's kind of become a cult favorite over the years, and that is Playing with the Boys.
Come on, man, 47, now we can get them. You guys are animals.
There were a lot of acts coming to different screenings to write music for the movie, and so I figured the competition would be stiff and plentiful. We got to the volleyball scene, and I said, we have to write for this one because we won't have any competition. It seemed to me that nobody would write for the volleyball scene. I saw it as a secondary scene to the movie, just a little fluffy moment. And that it took on a life of its own was not anticipated.
So that scene with the volleyball scene with Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer became quite iconic. And we are in the middle of Pride Month, and, you know, Spin later called it a sort of kind of accidental gay anthem. It was a sexual awakening for a lot of people.
Sometimes songs are adopted in ways that you'd never see coming. I think lyrically for me, it was a metaphor for the dangers of being in a relationship. Said it was the wrong thing for me to do. They said it's just a boys' game, but girls play too. But apparently that message that I wrote in that lyric has nothing to do with how people hear the song.
You redid it recently as well.
I want to tell you about that because that's incredibly connected to what you're talking about. We expected the sequel to Top Gun to be written and made years ago, but nothing really got adopted until Tom decided to produce it. The director came to meet with me, and he told me, you know, we definitely want to use Danger Zone, only you don't get to tell anybody about it because we want to keep it as a surprise. But he asked me to give it a shot on Playing with the Boys too. And he wanted me to do a boy-girl version, a duet with a female. And I thought about Butterfly Boucher. She's from Australia. She's definitely gay female. Unfortunately, they didn't use it in the movie, but you should check it out if you get a chance. It's still very much in that ethos of what you were referring to with what we're celebrating this month.
Very cool. I was also surprised to find out that you were not first in line to do Danger Zone. Bryan Adams was in the running, and Kevin Cronin from REO Speedwagon, I believe.
Right. I talked to Kevin, and he said he couldn't hit the high notes, so he bailed. Mickey Thomas from Starship was one of the top contenders, as I understand it. He definitely could hit the high notes. But the message I got, the rumor I got, was that the lawyers had screwed it up. And suddenly Giorgio found himself with a song he had to dub into the movie in like 3 days, being Danger Zone, and no singer for it. And he heard that I was in the studio down the street working on Playing with the Boys. So he called me and said, you know, are you interested? And I just asked one question, which was, is it a rocker? 2 days later, I'm in Giorgio's studio, and he and I worked on the tune vocally. My inspiration for my vocal approach was Tina Turner, because I wanted to have that edgy thing that she was developing, her new rock persona, with that classic R&B voice that she had, and pushed it into a more of a Rod Stewart direction. So when I got to Danger Zone, I did definitely my version of Tina.
There's some other soundtrack stuff that I learned from the book, Still All Right. Tina was the reference point for Danger Zone. And then Dylan, I would not have picked up on it, but he was a bit of the inspiration for I'm All Right from Caddyshack. David Bowie's Modern Love was one of the reference points to Footloose, which now I totally hear now that I'm thinking about it. I've always thought of Footloose as basically the male Flashdance. And I was very interested to find out that you wrote a song that was supposed to be in Flashdance.
I never actually finished it. It was a song that I called No Dancing Allowed before I fully realized that was exactly Footloose all over again. The song I had started when I saw the moviola, you know, the little screen in Bruckheimer's office. I watched most of Flashdance, and then he told me I wanted in on it. I passed on the movie, and then I went out to do my tour. I took one step too many over to the stage left and fell off the stage, spun around backwards in midair and hit the packing cases that were on the floor behind us and broke 3 ribs. I went home and they gave me plenty of painkillers. And while I was on the painkillers, I suddenly believed that I could go in the studio because I'm not on tour anymore and I feel fine. So why not just finish the song and go in the studio and write it and record a song for Flashdance? Then I realized that I cut it in a key that was too high for me because I was too damn stoned to think about what key the damn song was in. I was just a little too percolated out. And I just said, okay, I'm throwing in the towel. I'm out.
You were mentioning when you were talking about Flashdance being in a high key that you were stoned on pills at the time. And that's something I learned from the book, is that that was something you grappled with a couple times in your life.
My addictions were primarily benzodiazepine, which, came from my doctor and was like, well, you're going through a tough time. This was the second divorce. Take these benzos, but, try not to take them for too long. And I had 2 little kids. So when it was kid time, I wanted to have my shit together. And it was difficult. I don't know whether you've gone through one of those, but they can be very, very difficult. The second one was especially difficult for me. But then I got off of it. And then when I had a back surgery that I had difficulty with, they put me back on it. And then when I got back on it the second time, I just couldn't get off it. So I had to go to a clinic in, of all places, Florida, to get off of it. Then once they know, this takes about a week for them to go, yes, you're no longer physically addicted. And then the emotional part of the addiction kicks in. And also physical, to the point where I went 5 days without sleeping when I first got home. My brain couldn't shut down. But the emotional aspect of the benzo, what you initially took it for, that was no longer happening in my life by then. So as far as the trauma from the divorce, I could move into more of a meditative place to deal with that.
Now that you're looking back on your whole life in the book, is there any big takeaway, anything that blew your mind, or anything that was particularly therapeutic or cathartic to write about?
I think it was all both therapeutic and cathartic. We have more than one emotion at any given time. Take, for example, divorce itself. On one hand, I can say, God, that was just the worst moment of my life. And on the other, I can also say it was the most learning experience I've had. That taught me a lot about myself and my beliefs. And so, is it a bad moment or a good moment? It's a difficult moment. But I think when I look back, I've learned the most from my most difficult moments.